Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you've downloaded the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which they're both free to download, free to use, and sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. Of course, you could also catch the show on our live stream anywhere you scroll. If you'd like to get in touch with the program, you got some thoughts on Game 2, 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show, or if you, again, are watching on the live stream, you can drop a comment right there. Couple of guests I want to let you know about. Excited about both of them. EJ Raddick of NHL Network will join me in less than 20 minutes to give his thoughts on the Avs Wild series and also take a look around the NHL as a whole. Corey Roldan of KKTV, who was in the building at Ball Arena last night, will give us the lay of the land from his perspective. And I would like to start with the Avs win as well. Will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics, but largely based around this game. Who thought that we were going to get Game 1 all over again about 5 minutes into that game? I did. Couple of goals, bang, bang, and I'm like, oh, my predictions, Jared Bednar's predictions, everybody else's predictions that we would get a lower scoring affair. It looked like they were going to be out the window. But I guess they just needed one last flurry to get it out of their system. And then what we got was, I think, as complete of a performance that we have gotten from the Colorado Avalanche in now 6 games of these playoffs. I thought that they controlled the game, and a good indicator of the success you're having is how your best players do, right? It's a cliche in sports. This time of year, you need your best players to be your best players. Well, Nathan McKinnon was the best player on the ice last night. So that's one for the Avs. Had a goal and 2 assists. Gabriel Landeskog had 2 points. Marty Necas had 2 points. And then on the other side, Kirill Kaprizov gets an early goal, but he ends up -1 for the game. Matt Boldy got nothing. Quinn Hughes was in a straitjacket all night. The Avs' best players were the best players on the ice last night, and you would be hard-pressed if you were ranking the best players in that game to come up with a Wild player higher than 5 or 6 down the list. Avs were cruising in that game. And then, as you might imagine, Minnesota pushed back. That desperation level went up. They had some dangerous opportunities there in the third period, and there was Scott Wedgwood getting the start again last night. Some conversation on this show and others about whether it was the time to put Mackenzie Blackwood into the game. Jared Bednar rolled with him one more time, and he looked like the Scott Wedgwood that we had seen throughout the King series. And we'll get more into Wedgwood specifically, but the reason he deserved to get another start, to be back in net even after giving up 6 goals in Game 1, was because of what we saw in the LA series. The guy had earned the right to get back in goal and to show that Game 1 was an aberration. And I thought he did. He came up with 2 huge saves in that third period that could have completely swung the game. The first one was the Vladimir Tarasenko on that great feed from Mike McCarron. Made that stop. That was about 2 minutes into the third period. Right? And we've talked about how important the last 2 minutes, first 2 minutes of each period are, and how they can dictate the rest of the way that period goes. Well, that was a huge stop to keep the score where it was. And then about 4 minutes later, an even better save as Kirill Kaprizov was on the near post. The puck went across the face of goal. Wedgwood had to go completely across his crease to be able to keep that shot from going in. Now, Minnesota would make it more interesting there late in the game, but then they take a penalty. And that basically killed off any slim chances they had of coming back and winning that hockey game. So I don't know. It's like Sean Payton, the head coach of the Denver Broncos, always talks about. You're looking for that Shangri-La. You're looking for, from minute 1 to minute 60, the Avs to be clearly the better team. And it's just, when we talk about best performance or we talk about a complete game, we're not talking about every minute. Not at this point in the playoffs. Maybe that could have been possible in the LA series, but it wasn't going to be possible against a team like Minnesota, especially with the reality they were facing of what a 2-0 series deficit means. And with the skill that they have on that team, and Jared Bednar talked about it going into the series, their depth is underrated. Now, the Avs took their chances correctly to say, if we limit Hughes and we limit Boldy and we limit Kaprizov, we'll win that depth game. Nick Waugh popped up with the goal last night after, I think, that third line left something to be desired in game 1. The Avs will win the depth game all day long. But that's not to say that Minnesota doesn't have any. And especially in that third period, when Minnesota was throwing everything at the Colorado Avalanche, they looked the better team in stretches. And that's what you can expect. But when you zoom out and take the 60 minutes in its totality, the Avs were clearly the better team on the ice for the vast majority of it. And if you start rattling off the best players in that game, it's going to be Av before you get to a Wild player. And the icing on the proverbial cake here, the power play. 2 power play goals in that game. Here's Jared Bednar on what he likes right now from his power play.
Everything. I liked it at parts of the Kings, series as well. So, listen, it's much improved from the Olympic break on. I know people look at our percentage on the year, and when you go 5 months with it being poor, your percentage isn't going to climb that much. But it was 30% in March. We took a dip in April. It was pretty good against the Kings. We didn't score a bunch of goals. It's been dangerous, more than not.
And to back up Jared Bednar with the numbers, 28% since the Olympic break. That is one of the 5 best power plays in the NHL. But where they really started humming, and it got to a level, if we're being fair, a level that was not sustainable. When you're scoring a power play goal on every third power play you're getting, that's ridiculous. But what did that coincide with? The acquisition of Nazem Kadri at the trade deadline. The difference that Nazem Kadri has made on that top power play unit cannot be understated. And the Avs' best player is the first one to point out that not only has Nazem Kadri made a significant difference, but it's why he believes that the Avs' power play will continue to be dangerous.
What we're doing is sustainable. I feel like we're generating a lot of chances, and they're not just some lucky goals. So, but yeah, sorry, Nas has really helped us out. Obviously, when he first came and when he got hurt, trying to juggle it around again. But, super smart player. But I think the five of us are really getting on the same page and trying to, have great communication. I think it's making us a little more comfortable out there.
And he mentions, you heard Jared Bednar talk about the dip that the Avs took in April. Well, the reason for the dip is what Nathan McKinnon mentioned. Nazem Kadri got hurt. So there is a clear correlation between when the Avs power play has looked its best that we have seen it all season and Nazem Kadri being out there. And when the Avs are really going through it, 27th, 28th ranked power play in the league. Right before the Olympic break, I believe that was the timing of it. I said the Avs need more grinders on their power play because Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Marty Necas, as skilled as they are, the other side of the coin is they can be a bit too much of a perfectionist, right? Looking for the absolute best opportunity, and struggling compounds that, right? Instead of, mentally you're struggling on the power play in part because you're looking for the perfect opportunity. And instead of it going the other way and saying, oh, we're just going to throw everything at it, we're just going to be flying around and see what happens, you almost go more the other way. You lean more into, well, we got to find the perfect shot because our power play isn't productive. So that's why I said they needed scrappier players on it, because that's the key. You got to have the middle of the ice and you got to be in the net front. That's what you got to do. And that requires physicality. That requires a grinder's mentality. And I think the Avs have actually brought some of that to this power play. But speaking to the embarrassment of riches they have, they've blended plenty of skill with it, because Gabriel Landeskog has that in his game. The guys played on the third line. And then you add Nazem Kadri. And they got the 2 power play goals. One of them was Gabriel Landeskog finding a space right in the middle of the ice, right in front of Gustafsson in the Minnesota goal. They nearly got another power play goal the exact same way. But you have Landeskog and you have Kadri, who have been on the third line quite a bit, that bring that physicality, that mentality that's blended well with their skill level. And it just, my thought with the power play is just, I'm going to take it as it comes. Right? Nathan McKinnon says it's sustainable. We'll see. Because the results, quite frankly, were not there in the LA series. The process looked good. They did look dangerous, to Jared Bednar's point, but the power play goals weren't happening. But the power play all along, you don't have to be 33%, but you can't be 12. If the Avs find a middle ground with everything else that they have, the goaltending, the defense, the depth, the best players in this series, they got enough without the power play being unstoppable. But getting those 2, and also, by the way, killing off multiple Minnesota penalties, to me, again, was just the icing on the cake of what was, I think, start to finish, the best performance we've seen from the Colorado Avalanche. They were able to play their game. LA, they did a good job, but they were playing LA's game. And they were able to force through that because they were just much better than LA. In this series, I don't think that they can risk as much playing the way Minnesota wants to play. They're going to have to dictate the terms. And I thought last night they were able to do that. They were able to play their game while still not forgetting what they forgot in game one, which was the little details, the defensive side of the ice. And start to finish, it was their best. And I do fully expect Minnesota to come out with their best on Saturday. They might get a couple of key players back. That game's going to be at home. That building's going to be buzzing. I expect Minnesota maybe to put up their best performance of the series coming up on Saturday. But the Avs got the job done that they needed to. They have put Minnesota in a hole, that 2-0 series hole, that only 14% of teams in the history of the league have been able to dig out of. 719-24-7, 1313. Take your thoughts on Game 2, a 5-2 win for the Colorado Avalanche. Coming up next, EJ Radick of NHL Network gives his thoughts on what he saw last night. Avs take game 2 of their series with the Minnesota Wild, 5-2. And now the series shifts to St. Paul on Saturday. Long wait. But better for Avs fans to be sitting on a win as opposed to the alternative. Joining me now on loan from NHL Network is the great EJ Raddick to discuss last night and beyond. EJ, appreciate the time today.
If you want.
EJ, can you hear me?
Hey, over there, there's right there.
EJ, are you getting me? I don't think we're getting EJ. This has been happening with our phones of late that we're not communicating. EJ, do I have you now?
Hello.
EJ, are you hearing me? Nope. I can't.
Hello.
I can't hear EJ. Oh boy. Live radio, right? We'll see if we can get connected with EJ Raddick momentarily here. This happened the last time that we had a NHL Network person on. So we'll try and see if we can't connect with EJ Raddick. In the meantime, let's get to the text line at 719-247-1313. This from Aaron says, what an awesome game for the Avs. My only complaint from the game last night was Subban and Messier, PK Subban and Mark Messier, kept talking about how great not about how great the Avs were playing, but how poorly the Wild were playing. Great teams make good teams look bad. The Avs are a great team. And I do think especially, and it's not to say that Minnesota didn't make any mistakes last night. They certainly did. It was a far cry from the mistake-prone game we had in game 1 from both teams. But especially when I mention like Quinn Hughes and the ESPN commentators, Eric Johnson being one of them, they did a great job of showing how well the Avs were defending Quinn Hughes. And I think that's what Aaron is referring to there, is that the Avs made Minnesota look less than. And I think that was especially on the defensive side of things. I don't know, Mark Messier, PK Subban, they played the game of hockey at a high level for a number of years. But I would respectfully say, maybe the mistakes that were made were the ones that led to goals. I'll give you a great example. Perfect example of this, where you have to acknowledge that Minnesota had a breakdown. It was on Gabriel Landeskog's power play goal. And it looks similar to, I'm trying to remember, was it game 1 against Minnesota or was it a game against LA? It might have been game 4 against LA, but where Nathan McKinnon was inhabiting like the middle of the ice. And then at the last second, he kind of skated outward and nobody followed him. And the Avs were able to find him for a goal. It was that kind of same thing with Gabriel Landeskog. Like he was, closer to the near post, trying to crowd that. Minnesota had him there, and then he just kind of slipped a little bit to the middle of the ice, and he was wide open. That's a mistake by Minnesota. That's not necessarily what the Avs were doing. That was the plan for the Avalanche, but Minnesota didn't do a good enough job defending. That's a Minnesota mistake. So if you want to look at a couple of the goals as, being on Minnesota and the mistakes they made, then okay, we could discuss that. But the way that they defended Quinn Hughes, the way they defended Matt Boldy, even Kirill Kaprizov after he scored that opening goal, that was just the Avs, again, not getting the respect they deserve. And I get it, other fan bases, and I see this in the comment section on my Instagram with some of the videos that producer Ray has posted. You know, some other fan bases will get in there and like, Avs fans are so insufferable because, you know, we talk about how Nathan MacKinnon wasn't nominated for, or wasn't a finalist for the most outstanding player in the league, and Scott Wedgwood was snubbed from the Vezina, and it's like, I get it. It feels like it's never enough. But this is a team that led the league in both goals scored and fewest goals allowed. And that second one is what is not talked about nearly enough. And even last night, I'm listening to some of the press conference with Jared Bednar, and it's like he's being asked about the idea that his team's not physical. And it wouldn't be asked if it didn't exist. But like, why are we here still? That people don't understand that the Avalanche are a physical bunch, that they're committed to the checking game. They're committed to the defensive side of the ice. It's not what they would love to do, but how many skilled teams would prefer to commit to the defensive side? When you have, like, if you're a Lambo, do you want to be driving through school zones and picking up your kids? No, you want to get on the highway and you want to fly around. Like, the Avs want to get out and fly around. They want to put up a ton of goals. They want to put up 8 every single game, 8 or 9. But they understand, and it's been a process, right? I think a seminal moment in this franchise's history, but also in the career arcs of this core, Makar, Landeskog, McKinnon, was that series in 2021 with Vegas. And you know the comments that Nathan MacKinnon said after about how he's going into his 9th year and he hasn't won bleep. That was the frustration of the Avs being taught a valuable lesson, that the run and gun, scoring a ton of goals, it's not how you win Stanley Cups. It's how you put yourself in position to have a good path like the Avs did this year. It helps, but once the playoffs begin, it's such a different animal, and that team had to go through that series against Vegas, which Vegas just completely understood what it took, and the Avs didn't, or at least didn't enough. And from that moment on, we've seen the Avs commit to playoff hockey and all that it entails. But that's why I say, like, why is that narrative still out there? If you've been watching this team since 2022 and beyond, it's all they talk about. It's all they talk about is the defensive side and limiting teams. And in a season where they led the league in the fewest goals allowed, that doesn't happen unless you are a physical team that commits to the checking game and defends well. But because when you think of the Avalanche, you think of McKinnon, you think of Makar, you think of high skill, you think of a wagon of an offensive team. And maybe it comes as a shock when you see how well the Avalanche can defend. So there were certainly mistakes on Minnesota's side. I don't think that they would classify it as their best performance. But as far as Minnesota's best players, other than that early goal from Kaprizov being held off the board, that's to Aaron's point, how good the Avs are defensively. 719-24-7, 13-13. Speaking of which, let's talk about a couple of guys that have helped the Avs become the team that has given up the fewest goals in the league. Scott Wedgwood getting back to his groove, and an Avalanche player actually recognized for his exploits on the ice. What a novel concept. Switchbacks FC back at Widener Field this Friday night at 7, taking on Orange County SC. If you would like to go, I have a 4-pack of tickets for you. And you decide however you want to, Hunger Games style. Take your bribes. I'm just giving you the tickets. You do what you're going to do as far as deciding who comes with you. If you are the 13th texter to text Switchbacks in your name to 719-24-7, 1313, you'll win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on Orange County Friday night. Scott Wedgwood looked more like the Scott Wedgwood that you and I thought was snubbed as a Vezina Trophy finalist, giving up just 2 goals, as far apart in a game as they could be. Gave up the early one against Kaprizov, and then he gave up a late one that made things a little bit interesting, but ultimately Minnesota took a penalty shortly thereafter, and that killed any opportunity for them to actually come back. Here's Jared Bednar talking about his goaltender, Scott Wedgwood.
I felt like it was the right call to go back with him and give him that opportunity. I think he's earned it, and he did. I thought there wasn't a guy on our roster that wasn't better tonight than the other night, and he certainly he started from the goaltender out.
And the goal that he gave up to Kaprizov and the comment that Jared Bednar made there speaks to what most goalies are in today's NHL. Most goalies are merely an extension. I don't mean merely, but they're an extension of the team around them. You and I grew up in an era where you had Hasek and Brodeur and Belfour and Waugh, and it was just so many teams had these goalies that could just almost operate independently of everything else going on the ice. The team in front of them could be lacking, but they would be bailed out repeatedly by their goaltender. How many games did Patrick Waugh save for the Colorado Avalanche? How important was Patrick Waugh in the Avs' 2 Stanley Cup teams? And you could say that about a number of guys. That number has dwindled. And now you have, by and large, a fraternity of goaltenders who are byproducts of their environment. And I can think of no better example than Scott Wedgwood. The reason Scott Wedgwood has become this is in large part because of the players he's playing with. I mean, if you're an NFL fan, you would label these goalies as system goalies, right? Just blindly. System goalies. They're really good because everything around them is good. But maybe they're not superb. Maybe they're not one of the most talented at their position. Now, that is a slight on most quarterbacks when you say it, and it's also a slight against most goalies. But we have to acknowledge that part of the reason why Scott Wedgwood has found this success with the Avalanche after all this time is because he's playing with this Avalanche team. Okay? That's not a knock on him. But when you are not, you're not playing the role of fireman and you're not being thrown out there when the game's already out of reach, as Scott Wedgwood had to do so much of his career, if you're given an opportunity to be in the lineup night in and night out, and you're allowed to establish yourself with the supporting cast, this is how Scott Wedgwood becomes Scott Wedgwood. And it was a huge vote of confidence and a huge nod to what I just said from Jared Bednar to say, you know what, I'm going back to him. How many times in Scott Wedgwood's career did he get a start that went as bad as game one did? Right? Just in terms of the number of goals given up. And the coach of Scott Wedgwood say, I'm going back with him the next night. Hasn't happened a lot. But Jared Bednar trusts this guy. And just right along with that, he trusts the guys in front of him. They're going to be better, so Scott Wedgwood is better. And that is exactly what happened last night. And when you have that stability, when you have that supporting cast, because the Kirill Kaprizov goal was a egregious defensive breakdown by the Avalanche. They left Scott Wedgwood hanging out to dry. Like just as the game was starting, it felt like. But once he got settled, once the Avs committed to the defensive side of things, Scott Wedgwood made all the saves that he should make. And then in the third period, when Minnesota came at the Avs with everything they had, and the Avalanche perhaps not being able to sustain the effort for 60 minutes, they let off the gas a couple of times. And then Scott Wedgwood took it upon himself to make two massive saves in the third period to keep the score where it was. The save on Tarasenko on the great feed from McCarron, and then helping deny Kirill Kaprizov on the near post, sliding clear across. Those are uncommon goalie saves. Those are not saves you're quote-unquote supposed to make. But because he was allowed to settle in the game, because he wasn't under constant duress, he was able to make those kind of saves. And any goalie in the league isn't going to make those kind of saves consistently for 60 minutes. So it looked more like the Scott Wedgwood of the LA series. And we got plenty of time to get into this. Yeah, I don't see Mackenzie Blackwood in game 3. I mean, why? You have a chance to put your foot on the throat of Minnesota and take a 3-0 series lead. Why would you mess around? And this is not an anti-Mackenzie Blackwood. It took a very long time for me to come to the realization that the best goaltender for the Colorado Avalanche is Scott Wedgwood. So this is not an anti-Mackenzie Blackwood take. But you have 6 games now of the playoffs of Scott Wedgwood, and 5 of them have been very good. Right? And you have a chance to put Minnesota in a 3-0 hole. Not to mention the fact that Minnesota might be getting back Eriksson Ek. They're going to be back at home. I think game 3 is going to be the best effort we've seen from Minnesota yet in this series. And it may hold up however much longer the series goes as their best effort. The risk associated with making that Mackenzie Blackwood's first start of the postseason is not a risk I'm willing to take if I'm Jared Bednar, as much as I and he believe in Mackenzie Blackwood. So I'll have to find another spot if Mackenzie Blackwood is going to get a start here. But Wedgwood was good. And to keep up with the theme of how this Avs team can actually defend, what is the great irony of award season? McKinnon not recognized as one of the 3 most outstanding players in the league. Okay. That choice looked really good last night. Tell me what Macklin Celebrini did last night, by the way. Oh, nothing because he's not in the playoffs? Okay. I know. It's a regular season award. Still think Nathan McKinnon should have been a finalist over Celebrini. But the great irony is that the first time in this award season, as they roll out the finalists, the first finalists that the Avs have, defense. Brock Nelson being a finalist for the Selke Trophy, given to the best defensive forward in the league. I mean, isn't that ironic? I mean, we'll have to see what happens with the Norris Trophy and whether Cale Makar will be nominated. But Bednar doesn't get a nod. Nathan McKinnon doesn't get a nod. But here is Brock Nelson for a team that supposedly can't play defense, nominated for the best defensive forward in the league. Deserved? Absolutely. But even I run down the postseason awards, and the Selke wasn't the one that I was honing in on for an Av to be up for that. But Brock Nelson deserves it. You know, dating back to the Stanley Cup year, it's been this constant, mixing and matching and trying to find a second line center that is as much of a difference maker as Nazem Kadri was. I think they found him. It's just that Brock Nelson, the best of Brock Nelson, is not what we think of in terms of the impact Nazem Kadri made. I mean, we acknowledge Kadri's defending, but it was, what he have, like 85 points or something crazy like that. He hasn't even sniffed that number since. But it was the impact he made as a second line center that produced points like a first line center. But Brock Nelson, I could argue, has been as impactful as Kadri was if you just take into account his defensive game. He had a good offensive year, too. But it's been Brock Nelson's defense so often being out on the ice when the other team's first line is out there. He's done a great job. So well-deserved for him being a finalist. I don't know that he's going to win the award, but certainly a deserved finalist there. I think we're coming up on the Norris Trophy tomorrow, sometime this week, definitely. And then, of course, the Hart Trophy, a second opportunity for Nathan McKinnon to get recognized as he so rightly deserves. More on Nathan McKinnon's game coming up after the top of the hour. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Avs with a 5-2 win take a 2-0 series lead over the Minnesota Wild. Game 3, again, I will bear repeating because you'll wake up, maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, definitely Friday, and go, where are the Avs and Wild? Gotta wait till Saturday. You can hear the game on Extra Sports 1300, or you can watch it at the Brass Tap on Bass Pro Drive. $3.50 pints of Coors Light, Coors Original, or Coors Banquet, Miller Lite, and Mountain Time. Sports, Spirit, Social, the Brass Tap. Been a fun time partnering with them. And yes, next week, give a little bit of a tease here. I will be doing this show from the Brass Tap next week before one of the Avs and Wild games. Asterisk, if necessary. So more details on that soon. But yes, be out at the Brass Tap doing the show live. Looking forward to it. In the meantime, shifting gears just a little bit, but just as important, let's talk about what you're actually putting in your body. A lot of stuff that maybe is not a good idea, especially when it's geared towards men's health. At Low T Center, they use only pharmaceutical grade testosterone. It's not compounded testosterone. It's not artificial. It's not no mystery batches. It's important that you know what's going into your body. And when you first go into Low T Center, get that initial testosterone test to see if treatment is even right for you. And that's another great thing about Low T Center. They're not going to pressure you. If the numbers say you need it, then they'll suggest it. If they don't, they'll suggest other things. But if testosterone is something that you can benefit from, just know that not all testosterone is created equal. A lot of places don't want to tell you that. Low T Center does and has been highlighted for offering the highest quality testosterone on the market, so you know exactly what you're getting every time. When it comes to hormone therapy, quality matters. Don't settle for compounded, unknown testosterone. Go with the clinic that prioritizes quality from the inside out. Low T Center. Book your initial test at lowtcenter.com. That's lowtcenter.com. As I said, after the top of the hour, we discuss that game and what a game it was for Nathan McKinnon. Welcome in. Shouts to those of you watching the show on social media. Anywhere you scroll, really, you can find this show. And while you are in the place that you scroll, if you don't mind liking, subscribing, following, doing all of those things, because as I say, and people think I'm joking, I'm not joking. My self-esteem is directly tied to those kind of things. Likes, follows. Not proud of it, but it's who I am. And it's too late for me to change. You could also drop a comment on the stream. Brandon, I'll get to yours comments coming up because there are some really good comments. You could also text into the show at 719-247-1313. Corey Roldan of KKTV 11 will join me next segment. He was in the building last night for that 5-2 win, so I'd love to get his thoughts on it. So I appreciate him taking some time coming up here shortly. So started the show with kind of team-wide my takeaway from last night's 5-2 win, and I think it's the best performance in totality that we have seen from the Avs in these playoffs. And perhaps there are a couple of theories that I have. See what you think. One is last night was possible because Jared Bednar, he may seem cool, calm, and collected. I don't think he's been cool, calm, and collected after game one. Not at least to the team. So I almost think that performance in game two, the commitment to everything that it takes to win in the playoffs, was born out of there being so many things lacking in game one. So I think game one begat game two a little bit. The other part of it, Nathan MacKinnon. When Nathan MacKinnon looks like the best player in the world, the Avs usually are very good. And Nathan MacKinnon was doing everything last night. Yes, he had the goal. Yes, he had 2 assists. But how about the hits that he laid out? The one on Boldy that I would have, Boldy got up and got back on side. I would have gotten up and went right to the locker room. I would have been like, I'm out. So credit to Matt Boldy for getting back up. But Nathan MacKinnon destroyed him on that hit. And that wasn't the only one. He put one on Quinn Hughes. And notice those two names. Boldy, Hughes. Two of probably, at worst, the 4 best players on the Minnesota Wild. Probably 2 of the 3 best. Throw Kirill Kaprizov in there. And here's Nathan MacKinnon, much like the Avs by extension, not known for the checking game, not known for that physicality or doing it on the defensive side of things. And yet, when he does, the Avs are so much better. As Gabriel Landeskog will attest to.
We talk about it every time, but he's our driving force offensively. And tonight, and really since the playoffs started, defensively, he's been a beast as well. So, you talk about my leadership, but I think Nate's leadership is something that goes a lot under the radar. Means a lot to our team.
And really, the difference on the ice between Gabriel Landeskog's leadership and Nathan MacKinnon's leadership is there's not a lot of difference. Because it's both about the physicality blended with the skill. Gabriel Landeskog and Nathan MacKinnon are highly skilled offensive players. But when they're throwing their body around and when they're getting in the mix, in skirmishes after the whistle and things like that. That resonates. And when Nathan MacKinnon does it, it resonates even more because that guy could do plenty for the Colorado Avalanche and not care at all about the other end of the ice. He could just do his thing, set up others for goals, score his own goals, and that would be fine. But when he's committed to that, and I think a difference between the two is consistency. I can't say that we see it all the time with Nathan MacKinnon like we do Gabriel Landeskog. And certainly we don't get the vocal leadership from Nathan MacKinnon that the Avs get from Gabriel Landeskog. But you don't think Nathan MacKinnon's taking some cues from his best buddy and said, if Gabriel Landeskog can throw his body around and commit to the checking game and be more of a two-way forward, so can I. And it will make us even better. Here's Jared Bednar on his assessment of his star player.
He was unbelievable tonight on both sides of the puck. The physicality, the defending details, the hunger to check pucks back in all three zones, and the speed and pace that he played with early in the game. It was like he was shot out of a cannon, right? So I thought that's one of his best games of the playoffs for sure. And, it's not about production. He's going to produce, but kind of reminds me of like he's just doing whatever it takes for our team to win. That's what he wants the most.
And you know that to be the case with Nathan MacKinnon. Second time I'll bring up his comments following the 2021 loss to Vegas. I haven't won bleep. Dude just wants to win. And you think, well, everybody does. Sure about that?
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that? That's why?
Because there is another team that we follow closely around these parts that is no longer in the postseason because maybe they don't want it as much as the team across from them. That is not an issue that the Avalanche deal with. Here's Nathan MacKinnon on why he was shot out of a cannon. Why was it the best? Why was it one of his best games of the playoffs so far?
I don't know. I'm just excited to play. Playoff hockey is obviously the best time of year. Just excited and just trying to have a good start.
There is no person that there's a greater dichotomy in front of a microphone and away from it as Nathan MacKinnon. It's just so matter of fact. Like I'm excited. I'm happy. This is my happy place that I am in. And then he goes onto the ice and he's an absolute monster. And you've heard the legends of Nathan MacKinnon when it comes to his teammates' diet. Like this dude he wants to win everything. And he played like it last night. He was so good. And now you would say unequivocally with Connor McDavid knocked out, this is the best player left in the NHL playoff. The gap between him and Connor McDavid has closed over the years. So as long as McDavid's still around, you have that debate, but Connor McDavid's out. This is the best player that we have in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And he absolutely showed that last night. And then you get Gabriel Landeskog. Not to be outdone. Gabriel Landeskog himself had a very good game. It's not the games that Gabriel Landeskog has are not as loud as Nathan MacKinnon. When Nathan MacKinnon's on his game and Nathan MacKinnon is hunting, like you you can't take your eyes off of him. You don't lose him for a second. You are acutely aware of every time he is on the ice. With Landeskog, you don't notice it as much. There's a little bit more subtlety to his game. And then at the end of the night, you look and you're like, guy had 2 or 3 points. And as much as Nathan MacKinnon might be the best player left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, early bid for Gabriel Landeskog being the Conn Smythe winner. He was arguably their best player in the LA series, and he's been incredibly productive and impactful through 2 games against Minnesota. There are a lot of people in consideration. Didn't hear a ton from Cale Makar last night, but he's been key in the last 3 games before that for the Colorado Avalanche. So there's certainly a discussion, but Gabriel Landeskog's in that discussion. And he picks up another 2 points last night. Here's Nathan MacKinnon doting on his good buddy and teammate.
It's just a void you can't fill. We waited a long time for him to come back, and it was worth the wait. I think every month he got better this season. It's a lot of time to come back from. And I think obviously as a person, just a human, awesome to have around. And
That's enough.
Yeah. He's one of my good friends. So makes me happy to see him every day. And I think it makes the whole team happy. So
Gabriel Landeskog chiming in with that's enough. Both incredibly humble, do not like talking about themselves, but will go at length. I mean, that's as much as Nathan MacKinnon. That's the longest answer Nathan MacKinnon has given to any question in a very long time. But you see the dynamic between those two, and they've been through a lot, right? Nobody wants to think about the dark days, but both of them were a part of the dark days of this franchise, the lowest of the low points, but also the highest of the highs. So Gabriel Landeskog was incredibly impactful last night. And one other player, let's just make it a clean sweep here of guys. I guess Landeskog was on the second line again last night, but another top 6 guy. How about Marty Necas? Now Marty Necas has joined the chat. He had a couple of points last night, and on Twitter, I see Carolina fans like wondering if he's even the same person. In the story of the Carolina Hurricanes is that they are a team that is tremendous throughout the regular season, look to be a wagon, but have not been able to find the right formula to get them to win a Stanley Cup. And Marty Necas, to be fair, was a part of that. But now in Colorado, a place that has drank from Lord Stanley's Cup, that knows what it takes to win, can impart on players like Marty Necas what they need to do in order to win. Here's Jared Bednar on that transformation for Marty Necas.
Just because something's true one day doesn't make it true the next, and especially over time. He's put in a lot of hard work to be a trusted player on our team defensively. It's one of the talks we had when he got here, and a handful of times after that. If you're going to play with Nate and play against the opposition's best guys every night, I got to be able to trust you. You can't play there, no matter how good you are offensively, right? So he buys into that. The style, the players he plays with, it's important that he's on that line because he helps them a lot. And his game has grown, So I think those criticisms now are invalid.
And notice he mentioned playing with Nathan MacKinnon. Right? He's never played with a player like Nathan MacKinnon. Not many guys in the NHL have had that opportunity. And I wonder, it has to be a part of the decision made by Chris McFarland last year. I mean, whenever you make a trade, you are projecting what a player can be with you. It's not just on what they already are, it's what they still could become. And I got to imagine Chris McFarland kind of had that thought of, putting Marty Necas maybe in a more supporting cast member role than maybe he was in Carolina, playing with Nathan MacKinnon routinely could bring this out. And Jared Bednar saying it was a conversation when they brought him in of what he needed to do to get with the program that the Avs have. And now you're sitting here, Mikko Rantanen not in the postseason. Marty Necas still playing, contributing. I'm not gonna go down the road of trashing Mikko Rantanen and acting like this guy wasn't a keystone member of a team that won a Stanley Cup. Okay, that's not what this is about. This is just saying what they lost in Mikko Rantanen doesn't seem like they've really lost it. But it took work. Like, that's the thing. It takes work. Marty Necas had to buy into what Jared Bednar was selling to him. Because even in a year and a half or whatever it's been, like a year and a half ago, Marty Necas did not arrive on the Colorado Avalanche. This Marty Necas. It took time. And that's the difficult things you can't really see around. Right? You think a guy can fit with what you're doing. You think playing with somebody like Nathan MacKinnon and later Gabriel Landeskog is going to bring out the best. You've seen it before with other players. You just don't know. But Marty Necas, always the fourth player you mentioned with the Colorado Avalanche at best. Never any higher than that. He was incredibly impactful too as the Avs win 5-2 and take a 2-0 series lead against the Minnesota Wild. Corey Roldan of KKTV was in the building last night. Did he think we were going to get another gong show about 5 minutes in? He'll join me next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Avs take game 2, 5-2, and now they await their first game in St. Paul. Not Minneapolis, but I hear that those two cities are closely intertwined. Game 3 is on Saturday. Joining me now to discuss is the man that was in the building last night. He wasn't the only one, but he's the most important one. Corey Roldan of KKTV 11. How was it last night, buddy?
Electric. Different from Sunday. A lot less of that goal horn being heard on Tuesday night, but really electric game from really the first period. We thought it would be the same when the Wild tied the game at 1 apiece, but a really dominating effort by this Colorado Avalanche team that shows why they're the President's Cup winners and maybe could be one of the best teams of all time.
6 games in, unequivocally their best performance, or did you like something in the LA series more?
No, it's their best performance, all 3 levels. Offensively, the way that they moved the puck, special teams on a power play, that's the best the power play has looked in the postseason in a long time. That first power play goal with Gabe Landeskog, Nathan McKinnon, Marty Necas, Cale Makar, it looked like it was tic-tac-toe. It looked like the puck was on a string. The penalty kill was great. Wedgwood, I liked how Wedgie had bounced back and that the Avs trusted him to make the start again, unlike Minnesota. And then also the physicality. Physicality to me was the biggest thing at the end of the game, Ryan. Seeing Nathan McKinnon, your best player, maybe the best player in the world, bully Quinn Hughes and Matt Boldy, and the Wild doing nothing about it, that tells me everything about the series right now. If that would happen to Nathan McKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, or Valerie Nichushkin, or Brock Nelson, somebody would make sure they would stand up for Nate. Nobody stood up for arguably their best 2 players.
And that's a great point you make, because obviously this series is not over, but but this was supposed to be the more physical team, right? Minnesota what was supposed to be, and game 1, to be fair, nobody was physical. Game 2, it was certainly the Avs that looked a more physical team.
And they took Quinn Hughes, who's the most electric player on that team, out the ball game. They were pressuring him. Gabe Landeskog was hitting him early and often. Quinn couldn't really play make like he did in game number 1. I thought that was a big difference defensively, besides Scott Wedgwood, was the physicality that the Avs played with. And that offense right now, 12 different players scoring, Ryan, an NHL record through 2 games in the Stanley Cup playoffs. 16 out of 18 skaters having a point in this series. It's the depth. And it's also Nathan McKinnon, who has 6 points in 2 games. It's also Cale Makar, but it's the depth this team is playing with right now. They're 6-0 for a reason. They were the President Cup winners for a reason, and you saw every bit of that last night.
I know this isn't going to sit well with Jared Bednar or any coach, really, because the things coaches love to do is coach, right? So they want, not at the expense of winning, but they would like some things to tweak or improve upon as it goes on. As you listen to Jared Bednar, you listen to some of the players, is there something in their game that they think they could get more of moving forward?
I think they can play a little bit better defensively. While I thought it was good, there were still some chances. I thought they played better in front of the net, making sure rebounds weren't happening. I think defensively you can certainly play better. I had a criticism of the third line after the Kings series. The third line's been incredible. Nicholas Waugh has been great. So I would just say defensively, the penalty kill has been awesome. Power play has been so terrible this year. It's 3 out of 7 power play goals in this series, and that is so much better than what we've seen. But hey, how about we get a game where it's 3 for 3, a game where it's 2 for 2, and you are perfect on the power play, right? I think it could come because the way that they're passing it, it was so frustrating watching them during the season that they were overthinking. They're not overthinking. I just think it's speed and finding the opportunities right now, which is great. So I would say clean up a little bit defensively. Wedgie could play a little bit better. And then I would say let's go perfect power play.
Hmm. I mean, that's a high bar, but that's where we're at with the Avs.
I mean, like, I don't know what else you're going to go for.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I said this yesterday, like at some point adversity is going to hit them. Like it's just natural. It's going to. Not that I doubt that this team can get through it. I don't know when that happens. And in Minnesota,
maybe they go up 2-0, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they go up 3-0, and then you have to respond off of that. Maybe.
But is that going to? I mean, we know it's going to happen. When? Because I kind of thought last night with the, the goalie switch and the history of teams that go down 2-0 in a series, it's not good. I thought that the desperation level for Minnesota would go up, and I think it did in some ways, but it didn't show out. And the one thing we have to remember, because Gary Bettman's playoff seeding formula is ridiculous, this might be.
It is.
At the
That's
worst.
what I was about to say. If they sweep this, Ryan, they should sweep next round. They should go 12-0 in the Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah,
against Vegas.
I mean, this is supposedly, and let's give them their flowers. Okay, they proved out through 7 games they're better than Dallas. Now they're the second best team in the NHL going up against the best team in the NHL, and we're at a 2-0 series. I know adversity is going to hit at some point. I just don't know when it is, and I don't think anybody's rooting for it. It's just we've watched enough playoffs to know adversity will strike at some point. Maybe it's game 3 on Saturday.
Yes. I don't think it's going to be a sweep, thinking about it. I just don't want it to become a series again if I'm the Avs. And you have to win one.
And that's a great point, because that's where the adversity comes in. If the Avs take game 3, losing game 4 is not adversity.
Yes.
I would even argue losing game
lose game 3, game 4 becomes really important.
Sure, but that's not adversity. Like the Avs have put themselves in a position that it would take quite a bit from Minnesota to make things really adverse and put the Avs in a tight spot. We'll see what happens on Saturday, and let's not forget too that Minnesota might be getting at least Joel Eriksson back, and maybe more than that. So we'll see what happens. As far as the goalies go, I mean, we knew early in the day that Minnesota was switching. We thought early in the day the Avs weren't. What was the conversation in your circles at Ball Arena about the decisions from those two teams? One, for Bednar to stick with Wedgwood, and for Minnesota to go to Gustafsson. I saw a theory floated online that the Avs baited Minnesota into switching. That's like that Sean Payton stuff. I'm not subscribing to that.
DJ McCarthy, yeah.
Right. But what were the conversations like around the goalie decisions from these two teams?
So I had no doubts that they were sticking with Wedgie. What I heard from Jared Bednar is that he wanted to give Scott Wedgwood another chance to redeem himself. The way he played during the regular season and also in the first round of the playoffs, he kind of felt like that was a fluke, and it turned out to be right. Mackenzie Blackwood also hasn't played the best during practice recently. I know that they say that they still trust Blackwood, and he's a very serviceable goaltender. I believe Wedgie was first in save percentage. Blackwood was 5th or 6th this season. So the talk was that they were going to give Wedgie a chance to redeem himself, which he did. Where Minnesota, it kind of felt desperate almost a little bit, because Jasper won you a playoff series against a really talented Dallas Stars team. you come into Colorado short rest and you give up 9 goals. Yeah, it was bad, but did Gus play that much better? I mean, a
No,
little bit.
I didn't. I mean, the numbers say he did. I haven't looked at the analytics on it, but I don't know that Gustafson made any save where I went, that's, like what
Gasper's not making
like
that.
the two, right. And like the two that Scott Wedgwood made in that third period, the first one where he stopped Tarasenko, or I think it was like 2 minutes into the third period. And then the one later where Kaprizov was on the near post and he had to slide across. I didn't see any of those kind of saves from Gustafson. And I think that's what John Hines was kind of hoping, that he may get one or two of those throughout the game.
I will say Wedgie scared me a few times last night. He gets way too out sometimes on a power play sliding. And if those rebounds would bounce back, the Wild could have had some opportunities. Something to look out for there. One point I do want to make on this Avalanche team, that just talking to them, Gabe Landeskog, they're zoned in, man. You talk about that adversity. I think this is a team that wants to put the foot on the throat of the Wild. They don't want to let them get back in. They know the opportunity that they have, and they're in almost killer mode. Nathan McKinnon kind of showed you that last night. I talked about the physical hits, talked about offensively. They smell blood. They're a shark and they smell blood.
Whatever the opposite of that is, the Denver Nuggets. What is your most important opinion going into this offseason for the Denver Nuggets?
They got to get that fight back. They got to get their dog back, right? And that was never a question under Michael Malone. When I see Nikola Jokic fighting at the end of games and fighting in game 6, right? And nobody else is coming back to defend him. I know Aaron Gordon wasn't on the court, and that would be that guy. Mm-hmm. You need to have some dog. And you also need somebody to take the pressure off of Nikola Jokic. He didn't play typically like Jokic did, right? But 28, 10, and 14 should be enough most of the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that looks like. I don't think you're going to get a lot for Christian Brown or Aaron Gordon, so maybe you do have to look at trading Jamal Murray, who has had a career year, was really good until that series, but Minnesota wanted it more. Minnesota wanted it more, and that shocked me after they came into your house 2 years ago and won Game 7 because they wanted it more. And when I saw Nikola Jokic, dude, I mean, it was 5-on-1 several times. 5-on-1, and that it shouldn't be your best player doing that.
It's going to be a long off season for that basketball team, but it seems
what would
like
you do?
we're going to. I think. Well, I said two things the day after. I think you and I are of like mind. Everything you said, I fully co-sign. I said the two ways that you can realistically do it: not bring back David Adelman, which they've already apparently decided they are going to bring him back. And the other is trade Jamal Murray. And I've been quick to point out it's not, and you mentioned it, the season he had. This is not as much about, any deficiencies Jamal Murray has. It's almost like, in a way, he has to be sacrificed for the greater good. Like, who are you, to your point, Christian Brown has zero trade value. Aaron Gordon might have some, but you just mentioned it, like, that dog is Aaron Gordon, so you don't want to lose him necessarily. I think you're faced with not a lot of players that you can remake the team in the way you need to. I think Jamal Murray's that guy. So it's not bringing back David Adelman, which 0 for 1, and trading Jamal Murray. I don't know what else you could realistically do to make us sit here in October and go, this Nuggets team feels different.
So I agree. You need more shooters and more defenders. How do you get that? You got to trade a good asset.
Yep. You got to trade somebody. You know, Detroit. I look at the Eastern Conference. I look at an Orlando. I look at a Detroit. Even though Detroit's still playing, or in Toronto, and I say Jamal Murray would fit very well. They need Cade Cunningham needs another score. Toronto could use a score. Again, it's not that Jamal Murray all of a sudden is a bad player, but it's they have something. The Nuggets have something that these teams need. Boston, maybe even. They have something that the Nuggets need. Feels like a few Eastern Conference teams would be a good trade partner. How about Derek White back in the state of Colorado? I mean, when
great, he's a great. I mean, gold medalist, two-way player, shoots, can defend 100%. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. We'll see what they do. Word on the street is the Nuggets are going to meet with people like you and I here shortly. So we'll see what they're
get us on the payroll.
Yeah, we'll see what comes of all of that. Corey, really appreciate you stopping by. What do you got on tap? You got like a 3-day break here from the Avs. You got 5:30 and 10 tonight.
So 5:30, we're talking about Scott Wedgwood's performance, basically everything we just talked about. Also the power play being the biggest difference of the series so far, in my opinion. At 10 o'clock, it's Nathan McKinnon setting the tone. It's the dog. And then all the crazy stats that 14 goals in 2 games and 16 skaters out of 18 scoring a point. So all offense at 10, defense and power play at 5:30.
There you go. Corey, thanks for this, buddy.
I appreciate you, brother.
Yep, you too. That is Corey Roldan, KKTV 11, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. Yeah, I think we all have kind of the same idea when it comes to the Denver Nuggets. Do the Nuggets have the same thought as we do? We're all in agreement here. What do they think? Already retaining David Adelman reportedly. Don't know if they're of the same mind. 719-247-1313. Some of your thoughts after this. Mother's Day. Ever heard of it? It's coming up Sunday, May 10th. Win her pearls from Louisa Graff Jewelers. It's a sterling silver freshwater pearl strand and earring set, a $298 value. Enter to win at extrasports1300.com or kvor.com. And tomorrow night, the entries will close because we got to pick a winner and we got to get them the prize so they could give it to their mother or their wife or their sister. I don't know. A mother in their lives. So enter to win, extrasports1300.com or kvor.com. Avs win 5-2. We'll get more into my thoughts on the subject coming up after the top of the hour. First, as promised, Brandon, I want to get to a couple of your thoughts that you've dropped on the stream watching on X. Says, is this the most dominant team Colorado has had? I think our third line can beat Montreal starters, Ryan. I think this team wins in 7 versus the 0-1 team. Well, I will say I said this at the end of the regular season. On paper, this is the best team the Avalanche have had in the salary cap era. I don't know if I'll look at any Avs team on the same level that I look at their second Stanley Cup winning team. That team was ridiculous. But it was built under a different set of financial rules. The fact that the Avalanche have been able to put together this team, that Chris McFarland has been able to put together this team with a hard salary cap is remarkable. And look, he took some risks. Trading Mikko Rantanen was a risk. But now you have Marty Necas and Jack Drury from that trade who are contributing in a big way. As fourth line, I know you mentioned the third line, but the fourth line, I think, is giving Minnesota all sorts of problems. And Jack Drury's on that line. You bring back Nazem Kadri. You make the trade for Brock Nelson, who today is a finalist for the Selke Trophy given to the best defensive forward in the NHL. Wedgwood, Blackwood. The list goes on. While retaining, by the way, Landeskog, McKinnon, Makar. This team on paper is better than any other Avs team. I'm not going to say the 0-1 team. So I disagree with you on that one. Respectfully. But on paper, better than their Stanley Cup team of 2022, which is the bar, right? In this era of Avs hockey, that is the bar. They are better on paper than that team. But the only way that they will truly be considered better than that team is if they win a Stanley Cup. Not every franchise has that as the bar that you have to clear. The Avalanche are one of them. The Broncos are one of them. You got to win that big trophy at the end of the season to even be in the conversation of the best teams that a particular franchise has ever had. I will slightly disagree with you on the 0-1 thing. I think that 0-1 team is the standard. But it also can exist. It can't exist again. Because you can't get Bork and Foote and Sakic and Forsberg and Drury and Hayduk. You can't get all these guys when there's a hard salary cap. So it's a little apples and oranges. But if this team ends up winning a Stanley Cup, I take them over every Avs team, including their first Stanley Cup team that was built with no salary cap. But that 0-1 team was obscenely good. Another tweet coming in from Brandon. That's how we felt about Varley and Darcy. However, I feel much better about Wedgie than I felt about those two in recent history. And I think what Brandon's referring to is my point that Scott Wedgwood and so many goaltenders today, we are not in a golden age of goaltending in the NHL. The golden age was when Patrick Waugh was around. That was the golden age. Those were goaltenders that seemed independent of everything going on around them because they were just so unbelievably good. I mean, even Connor Hellebuck, who right now is viewed as the best goaltender on planet Earth. Guy won a gold medal, right? Has won Vezina trophies. Even he succumbs to a lack of a supporting cast around him. So Scott Wedgwood, to your point, I agree with you. That was kind of Varlamov was maybe viewed as a little bit more, but certainly Darcy Kemper, I think you're spot on. And that was the bar for Darcy Kemper. Make the saves you're supposed to make a couple you're not supposed to, and we'll win a Stanley Cup. I think you have to say, again, this goes back to on paper or through 6 games of the playoffs. I agree with you that Scott Wedgwood has been better this season than Darcy Kemper was when the Avs won the Stanley Cup. I thought Darcy Kemper was really good. So I still think Scott Wedgwood, like so many goalies today, are extensions of their team that are not as able as some of the goaltenders we grew up with of impacting games the way that Brodeur, Hasek, Waugh, Belfour, the list goes on, were able to. But you saw last night when this team commits to physicality, to the checking game, to defense, Scott Wedgwood can come up with those 2 huge saves he made in that third period to keep the score where it was and keep Minnesota from having any chance to come back. You can drop a comment on Facebook, X, Instagram, and get to it as we hit the next hour. In the meantime, tell you a lot about Low T Center. One of the biggest differences about Low T Center is who's actually guiding your care. Every provider there, board certified, truly specializes in hormone health. They know the right questions to ask, the right labs to run, and how to manage side effects the right way. But here's what really stands out. They don't just treat you like a number on a chart. They take the time to know you, your goals, whether that's better energy, better workouts, better sleep, or just overall feeling like yourself again. That personal approach is why so many men trust Low T Center for their hormone health. You could be the next one. Book your free testosterone test at fixmylowt.com. That's fixmylowt.com. The 3 stories that are driving the show coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in. Appreciate you stopping by, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you're watching this show today. Anywhere you scroll at 740 KVOR and at Extra Sports 1300, you can also do it on my social media platforms and on X at Gingerly Tweets and on Instagram at Gingewatch. Anywhere is fine. I'm good. I just appreciate you tuning in on a daily basis to this program. If you would allow me to return the favor and have you on this program, you could text into the show at 719-247-1313, or you could just drop a comment on the live stream, and I will get to your thoughts throughout this hour. And perhaps these three stories that all have a very distinct Avalanche theme to them are what you want to talk about today. They are the three stories driving the show. Yes, these are all about game two. So let's start with the big picture of last night as story number one.
35 seconds to go in the power play. Landeskog in the corner. Now it's Kadri again all the way through. McKinnon! He scores! The Mac attack is back, Jack! The second power play goal of the game for the Avalanche. Nathan McKinnon has his 59th career goal in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the lead is now 3. It's 4-1 Colorado.
The incomparable Connor McGahey on the call for Altitude Sports, as heard on Extra Sports 1300. We did not get a repeat of game one, although early on it looked that way. Couple of early goals, and we're like, is this going to be the same thing? It was not. The game settled down. Both teams settled in, especially the Avalanche, and it turned into what has to be deemed the most complete Avalanche performance of these playoffs. 6 games in, none of which the Avalanche have lost. We're now talking about their best performance. That is a little scary if you're a team remaining in this Stanley Cup bracket. But I thought that the Avalanche had it going in every phase of their game. And what stands out to me most, and it's something Jared Bednar continues to harp on, and I still don't think everyone has quite caught up to this, the Avalanche can defend. In fact, today, maybe something will change now because Brock Nelson was named a finalist for the Selke Trophy, given to the best defensive forward in the league. This team had Matt Boldy, had Quinn Hughes, and other than the one time they let Kirill Kaprizov get away, they had all three of those guys in straitjackets. Completely took them out of it. And a good indication of whether something is your best performance is how your best players do. McKinnon, 3 points. Landeskog, 2 points. Natchez, 2 points. Minnesota, Kaprizov, 1 goal, was a -1. Boldy, Quinn Hughes, nothing. The Avalanche, as if the 4 games against LA, and I guess I understand, right? And I don't mean to keep bringing up LA and rubbing salt in the wound or anything like that if you're a Kings fan, but Minnesota's different than LA. So I guess I kind of understand where there would be a healthy amount of skepticism regarding the way that the Avalanche defend, going from them doing it against LA to doing it against Minnesota. That's fair. Game 2 should have been a signal to anybody watching that this Avs team can defend. They did, I will remind you, give up the fewest goals of any team in the National Hockey League this year. They've been doing it all year. I get it. Expectations go up. Playoffs are different. Now it's Minnesota. It's not LA. But against Minnesota, a team that is in the mix for the second best team in the league. They just knocked off Dallas. You got Carolina on the other side. But you got Carolina, Colorado, Minnesota. Those are the three best teams in the NHL. Let's not forget how Gary Bettman sets up these playoffs. The Avalanche, I thought, controlled the vast majority of that hockey game against, at worst, the third best, maybe the second best team in the league. And they can play this way. They can continue to play this way. They showed it in the LA series. But there is one player above all others that stood out to me, and he is the subject of story number 2.
We talk about it every time, but he's our driving force offensively. And tonight, and really since the playoffs started, defensively, he's been a beast as well. So, you talk about my leadership, but I think Nate's leadership is something that goes a lot under the radar. Means a lot to our team.
That is Avalanche Captain Gabriel Landeskog talking about Nathan MacKinnon. I mentioned the 3 points he had, the goal, the 2 assists. But what most people are talking about today is the hits he put on Quinn Hughes and Matt Boldy. When Nathan MacKinnon is as committed to being a two-way forward as Gabriel Landeskog is, that's what makes the Avalanche petrifying. And having 29 charging at you is scary. But Nathan MacKinnon, and he's never going to be able, he's never going to vocalize what it is. Because Nathan MacKinnon, very brief, very to the point. He talked about how excited he was for the playoffs. But when Nathan MacKinnon is unleashed up and down the ice, there's nothing as an opposing team you want to deal with less than Nathan MacKinnon committed to both ends of the ice. And we have to be fair. He's not always as committed on the other end of the ice as a Gabriel Landeskog would be. But man, when they get it, that's where you see a team controlling things from almost beginning to end. The hits that he put on Hughes, and especially Matt Boldy, bone rattling. That's what takes the Avalanche from an elite team to, I don't know how you beat this team. And I think that's kind of the sentiment today. How do you beat this Avs team? When Nathan MacKinnon is doing that, when he is committed to both ends of the ice, when he is delivering as much punishment to opposing skaters as he is opposing goaltenders, I don't know how you do. Will we get Nathan MacKinnon every single game the rest of the way with as much responsibility as on him to produce goals? Maybe not. But anytime that version of Nathan MacKinnon and that level of commitment up and down the ice is had, you're not beating the Avs. You're just not. So now let's throw in Nathan MacKinnon to the early Conn Smythe conversation, because he was good in game 1. He was brilliant in game 2, and every bit the beast Gabriel Landeskog described him as. Let's go to story number 3.
I felt like it was the right call to go back with him and give him that opportunity. I think he's earned it, and he did. Like I thought there wasn't a guy on our roster that wasn't better tonight than the other night, and he certainly he started from the goaltender out.
Jared Bednar patting himself on the back, perhaps quietly, for going back to Scott Wedgwood for game 2. And to Jared Bednar's point, the guys in front of him were better, and lo and behold, Scott Wedgwood was better. And I think it was perfect complementary hockey. We talk about this in football all the time, right? The 3 phases of the game playing into one another, setting each other up for success, right? You go 3 and out and a drive deep in your own territory. You got to punt it away. Now you're putting your defense in a difficult position. The Avalanche put Scott Wedgwood in a tough spot in game 1, and he could not rise above it. But they put him in a much better spot. Other than letting Kirill Kaprizov get free early in that game, they set up Scott Wedgwood for success. And then when Minnesota made their final push in that third period, Scott Wedgwood, because he was more comfortable, he was under less duress, was able to come up with those plus saves that help keep the game where it is. The save he had on Tarasenko, who received that great pass, and Scott Wedgwood was able to stop him. And then about 4 minutes later, it was Kirill Kaprizov just chilling on the near post, Scott Wedgwood having to go clear across the crease and being able to make that stop. Coincidentally, it was those saves happened right after Eric Johnson, Bob Wischusen on the ESPN call, talked about how once in a while you need your goaltender to make some big saves to help you win a game. And then right on cue, boom, boom, Scott Wedgwood made the best 2 saves of the night to keep Minnesota down and to keep them from coming back in that game. He's not he's not Patrick Waugh. He's not Dominic Hasek. He is emblematic of where goaltending is in the NHL today. They are extensions of the team in front of them. When that's right, you have a chance to get some pretty special goaltending. And I thought, especially in the third period, the Avs got that from Scott Wedgwood as he makes 29 of 30, stops 29 of 31 shots. Now, this will be a conversation. I don't know how much of one. I think I can kind of start and end it right here. If last night wasn't the night for Jared Bednar to give Mackenzie Blackwood a look, Saturday isn't. I think you go right back to Wedgwood. This is a team, and Corey Roldan of KKTV brought this up in our conversation in the last hour. I think it's a phenomenal point. I just think this team is, he said they're locked in, but I'll take it one step further. This team is, as cliche as it sounds, is on a mission. And when you're on a mission, you don't want to mess around with any of these games. Mackenzie Blackwood, as good as he has been throughout the regular season, and as much as Jared Bednar trusts the guy, there is a level of risk associated with putting him back in at any point. There just is. I don't think this Avs team wants to incur that risk for even game 3 when they're leading 2-0. I think they want to keep their foot on the gas, their foot on the throat, whatever imagery you want to use. Scott Wedgwood has been awesome in 5 of the 6 playoff games the Avalanche have played. I expect him to be in goal for game 3 because I think that the Avs very much want to take a 3-0 lead. They don't want to give Minnesota any life. And the goaltender that's going to give them the best chance to do that is Scott Wedgwood. Maybe they could win game 3 with Mackenzie Blackwood. Why even have that be a question? You gave Wedgwood a chance to bounce back after game 1. He did. Give him the net in game 3. Find a different spot to get Blackwood in there if you want. I don't think it's game 3. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. You can also comment on the live stream if that's how you are consuming today's show. We'll continue on with Drive Time Sports right after this. Territory Days celebrates its 50th anniversary in Old Colorado City, May 23rd through the 25th. Enjoy live music, great food, a beer and wine garden, vendors, gold panning, and much more. And the best part is free admission. Territory Days is sponsored by Great Clips, Kingdom Builders, Family Life Center, and Huberger Subaru. Celebrate Memorial Day weekend in Old Colorado City with Territory Days. It's a big deal around these parts if you're new to the area. And I will be out there some weekend, some part of the weekend. Keep you updated on that. But any day of those three would be a good day to go out to Territory Days later this month. SoCal Dave checking in on the text line at 719-247-1313 says, hey, Ryan, 4-day break for the Avs. Why? Because of poor planning on Minnesota's part. It's what it is. They have events going on. That's the way I understand it. I think one is some kind of kids concert and one's something else. I don't know, rodeo maybe. But that's what I have heard. That's the reason why the arena in St. Paul will not host hockey until Saturday, which that's weird considering they are the state of hockey. You would think they'd even set aside the dates for the potential that their hockey team would be playing. But that's what I heard. I don't love it. I'm very much someone that wants to keep the momentum going. Not momentum necessarily like the Avs, sustaining momentum from game 2, but just the momentum of the postseason. Right? The every other day thing. And I get it during the playoffs, they're going to stretch it out a little bit, give you 2 days between games when the scene shifts to another city. I don't like it, but I understand it. But getting a rhythm, sustain the momentum, I like that. And waiting till Saturday to play game 3, especially with where this series is. Like I don't know which fan base hates it more. Honestly. Is it Colorado because you're excited with what the Avs are doing? You want to see him back on the ice. You want to see him try to put Minnesota, deep in the ground, as one of the drops on Jim Rome would say. Or is it Minnesota because the first 2 games have gone the way it is and you're dying for your team to play in front of you, the home fans, so you can, make a difference and try to swing this series back the other way over the next 2 games. I think both fan bases hate it. But if there is a team that I think it helps Minnesota more. I think because Joel Eriksson Ek ruled out before the series started for games 1 and 2. Would it have been more of a question for game 3 if it would have been played on a regular rotation? I know the Avs have Josh Manson out, so I'm not saying that an extended break can't be beneficial for the Colorado Avalanche, but I think you notice that Minnesota does not have Eriksson Ek. And I'm not saying he completely changes this series, but he offers a lot more resistance to Nathan MacKinnon than what they have out there now. Eriksson Ek has been for a while one of the best defensive forwards. He's Minnesota's version of Alexander Barkov. Not saying he's better than Barkov, who is the gold standard for me right now in the NHL, and he missed all of this season due to injury. But he's the gold standard when it comes to defensive forwards. What he has done against either Draisaitl or McDavid in the last couple of Stanley Cup finals. Like, to me, he's what everyone else is measured against. And when the Selke Trophy nominee or finalists came out today, and Brock Nelson being one of them, one name was noticeably absent, and that was Alexander Barkov. But I think that getting Eriksson, I think Eriksson Ek is the most important player that has not played in this series. More than Josh Manson. So I think that helps them. And I think that, I don't know if they need a 3-day breather, but I think Minnesota needs to come up for air a little bit. Their series with Dallas went long. They had to turn around and play the Avs. These 2 games at Ball Arena have been very tough for them. I think they could use a mental reset as well. And it gives Hines some extra time to figure out what he's going to do in goal. I mean, that's going to be the big question, in addition to whether Manson and Eriksson Ek return for their respective teams. Where does Minnesota go in goal? I don't know that they got the lift from Gustafsson that they were hoping for. I think as much credit as you give to the 2 teams, it was inevitable that it wasn't going to be, even though we thought it early in the game, I think it was inevitable that last night would not be the gong show it was in game 1. So I didn't see Philip Gustafsson do anything above and beyond to make it a no-brainer. Back at home, I think they go Wallstedt. And that's just my hunch. I'm not on the Wild beat. But I'd go back. Clearly you went to Gustafsson. And Corey Roldan said this in our conversation last hour, and I agree that there was a little bit of desperation in the move to Gustafsson, but I think there should have been a little desperation. I think you had to do something. And at the end of game 1, the announcers were wondering why both goaltenders were still in the game. And Wallstedt hadn't played as well as Scott Wedgwood did in the first round. So, and I said this yesterday, I understood from both teams' perspectives on why they made the decision they did in goal. But I think now, if you're Hines back at home, I think you go back to Wallstedt. I mean, you don't make the move unless you believe that you can get him back. Meaning, if there was a risk that it looks like their franchise goaltender, or at least the guy that's going to be their number 1 for years to come, if you thought you might lose him mentally by not playing him in game 2, you wouldn't have done it. So they believe that young Wallstedt can come back and recover. So I think they go back. I think they go back to him. But Hines has got plenty of time to think about it. 719-24/7 at 1313. Take your thoughts on game 2, looking forward to game 3 and beyond. It's starting to feel like a collision course with Carolina and Colorado. Because I don't think any team has looked as good as those 2 teams have. And they're both off to 6-0 starts in the postseason. It's starting to feel like that's where we're heading. And I think game 3, respectively, in St. Paul and Philadelphia will say a lot. But it looks tough to beat Carolina and Colorado right now. The 2 number 1 seeds playing every bit like that through a round and a half of the playoffs. No Carolina Philly tonight. The early game is Buffalo and Montreal. That game's underway. I should get that. Why am I watching Philly in New York? I need to get the hockey game on. And then later tonight, curious minds, I think, a little bit, especially now that the Avs are up 2-0. You don't want to look ahead, right? Same mentality as the team, but maybe you start to peek a little bit at what's going on between Anaheim and Vegas. Game 2 of that series is tonight at 7:30. We'll take a break, have more Drive Time Sports after this. Mother's Day is coming up on Sunday, May 10th. Win her pearls from Louisa Graff Jewelers. Sounds like a good deal. A sterling silver freshwater pearl strand and earring set, a $298 value. Enter to win at extrasports1300.com or kvor.com by tomorrow evening, because we got to pick a winner and get them the goods so they can give it to the mother in their lives. I want to, before I start an international incident, to SoCal Dave's question, I have looked into it, and I was half right. The building in St. Paul does have games going on, or I just gave it away. They have games. They have PWHL games. So the state of hockey, I apologize, because the reason why the men's team in St. Paul can't play is because the women's team in St. Paul is playing. So again, mea culpa. My apologies all around. But that is the reason. It was a building conflict. I knew that. But it is because the PWHL team is playing against Montreal on Thursday and Friday. Speaking of, I've been hearing that Denver could become an expansion city for the PWHL. PWHL has visited Colorado on a couple of occasions. I think it's gone very well. You see the success of Denver Summit in the crowd they had for their opener. And a lot of people are saying that Denver would be a great spot, and I have been hearing that that's a possibility. Now, today they dropped expansion news that it will be Detroit who gets the next franchise, not Denver. Which you may say, how dare they? But what a way to breathe life back into the Detroit-Colorado rivalry than to have Detroit given an expansion franchise before Colorado. Just hasn't been the same since the Red Wings moved to the East. So good on the PWHL. But I would expect, and I think they're expanding to a few cities here over the next year or two. I would expect Denver to get a team. Should be awesome. That league, like the NWSL, like the WNBA, growing exponentially in popularity. And I'm all about more sports. Whatever. You want to bring a professional pickleball league team to Colorado? I'm down. More sports is better. What was the other thing? Oh. So some good news on the front of the Colorado Springs Switchbacks, as today they got a couple of shout outs from the league. Brennan Creek, or I guess this was from the U.S. Open Cup, not the league. Brennan Creek and Christian Herrera were recognized for their performances against the Colorado Rapids. They were named to the team of the week of the round of 16 in the U.S. Open Cup. Brennan Creek with the equalizer in the first half up in Commerce City, and then Christian Herrera. Without him, that game would have gotten ugly. He made some huge saves in that match. And both of these guys have really come on for the Switchbacks, not just in the Open Cup, but in league play as well. I thought Christian Herrera was terrific on Saturday against San Antonio. And then Brennan Creek, once again, popping up. Switchbacks fall down 3-2. Oh, no. Panic setting in. They go right down the field. Brennan Creek puts a ball into a dangerous area. San Antonio bats it into their net. and the Switchbacks equalize steal a point from their biggest nemesis. I think, and it's remarkable to see the growth of Christian Herrera, because I've been calling his matches since he joined the club. But it's remarkable, too, to think of how far Brendan Creek has come in just a year's time. He joined this team a year ago on a 25-day prove-it tryout contract. And now he's been in the starting 11 on a regular basis. I know the coaching staff, the previous coaching staff, which Alan McCann was obviously a part of, really liked Brendan Creek when they brought him in. And now with Alan McCann leading the team, now you're seeing Brendan Creek get trusted even more, and has certainly brought some sandpaper and grit to the midfield of the Colorado Springs Switchbacks at a time that they've been without Stevie Echeverria. We're still waiting on Speedy Williams' first match back as a member of the Switchbacks. So they've needed what Brendan Creek has brought. And when Stevie is healthy, when Speedy is healthy, there are going to be some difficult decisions that Alan McCann has to make. But credit to Brendan Creek, he has made the most of these opportunities. And speaking of Alan, he was recognized as the USL Championship Coach of the Month for the month of April. And I should hope so, considering the guy. And I don't know if they factor in what happened in the U.S. Open Cup. But you get, and I'm trying to make sure I remember my dates here. So they blow out Monterey Bay at home. They go down and get a result in the USL Cup against Phoenix, 1-0. Yeah, I think it was a pretty good month. And in addition to the team showing in the U.S. Open Cup. And there's just, I said this the other day when I was recapping the match against San Antonio from over the weekend. There is just a belief from Alan McCann, like almost defiant. I remember asking him the question late last week. You know, how do you turn the page from the Rapids game and get ready in 48 hours to play a team and go to a place that has been a place that has been a house of horrors for you, and a team that has been your biggest nemesis? And he didn't even blink. He didn't flinch when he talked about his belief that his team would be able to do it. And I don't think that a point is, even though it felt like a good point to get, I don't think that Alan McCann was satisfied necessarily with just getting a point from San Antonio. But you hear so many athletes and coaches talk about belief. They all do. But there are some where you believe it a little bit more. And with Alan McCann, I do. And if that's the way I feel, how does it feel within the team? And he got them over the last month to go into hostile environments, places and situations that the Switchbacks franchise had not succeeded in, and got results, and has this team playing about as well as anybody in the league right now when you take in all competitions. And now they're going to be at home for a couple of weeks. Friday night against Orange County, a week from Saturday against New Mexico United. Excited to be back out at Widener Field. But congratulations to Alan McCann, Brendan Creek, and Christian Herrera. Well deserved. The accolades they received from the U.S. Open Cup as well as the league. Watching VJ Edgecombe. No, I did not change it to the Buffalo-Montreal game. I should have. VJ Edgecombe is joking with Spike Lee on the sidelines. 29-27 Knicks. I did not expect Philly to get run out of the gym like they did in game one, but no Joel Embiid. And he's been the most curious thing about this postseason, to be quite honest, because I felt like the Sixers were almost better without him. And then better, I should rephrase that. Better not relying on him. Right? You know, so many teams, when they have a superstar player, tend to rely on them, Nuggets, a little bit too much. And this will he, won't he play stuff that they've been going through for a couple years now with Joel Embiid, I feel like it's hampered them. It's hampered their progress. And I also think that the team that Daryl Morey has assembled doesn't really fit Joel Embiid anymore. And VJ Edgecombe being one of those players. Like, Sixers should play like up tempo. And how's Joel Embiid going to do that? And then he comes back and he's awesome, which makes him one of the bigger what ifs or, you know, of recent NBA history, because there was, I know we didn't like the people that were saying these things, but there was a debate between Jokic and Embiid at one point on who the best big man in the league was. And then it was clearly only Jokic and not Joel Embiid. But you see those flashes of brilliance from Joel Embiid that helped them beat the Boston Celtics. But he's out for this game. I don't know if it behooves Philadelphia to get back on that, whatever it is, that treadmill, that pendulum of, will he play? He's playing, he's not playing. He's playing, he's not playing. So we'll see how bad this latest injury is. OKC and the Lakers game 2 tonight. No Luka. And I did sports news this morning on KVOR, and I likened OKC to the Avalanche. Like, the Thunder just look like they're on a mission. And it's not just a mission to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy again. It's to be as close to 16-0 winning the Larry O'Brien Trophy as they can get. I expect either Minnesota or San Antonio, whoever comes out the other side, to offer more resistance than the Lakers without Luka. But man, OKC look tough. That's one thing that has one opinion that has not changed as these playoffs have gone on. The Nuggets have made me rethink a lot of what I felt about them. OKC hasn't. I went in saying Nuggets aren't being OKC. I don't know if anybody is. Kind of the same as the Avs. Carolina is still out there. But man, if the Avs play like they did last night and Nathan McKinnon's playing that two-way game, good luck. Let me get in a word here about Low T Center. And you know what Low T Center by now. Hopefully you do. Hopefully I'm doing what I'm trying to do and make you aware and know what Low T Center is about. And that's treating men with low testosterone. But they're not just about that. They've diversified. If you've been curious about peptide therapies, PT141, NAD+, or GLP-1s, I think the last one is what most people are aware of these days. If you're looking at those GLP-1s for weight loss, they offer a wide range of options designed to help with the weight loss, but also recovery, also sleep, muscle tone, healing, weight loss, and even hair and skin quality. So everything they do, the level of care, specializing the way they do in testosterone therapy. They are now bringing that into the peptide world. Everything is handled by medical professionals who understand how these therapies fit into your overall health plan. So whether you're just getting started or you're looking to take your results to the next level, start the conversation at Low T Center. Go to lowtcenter.com. That's lowtcenter.com. That is it for the show today. My thanks to EJ Raddick and Corey Roldan for being willing to join me on the program. Thanks to all of you for your interaction and your patronage. Quiet night, although, again, Montreal Buffalo going on right now, and maybe you want to get an advanced scouting report done on Vegas and Anaheim. Those are the two Stanley Cup playoff games that are going on tonight. And as I said, OKC LA is the late NBA game this evening. Or you may be watching the finale of The Boys or Daredevil. Highly recommend Daredevil. Terrific end to the season. The Boys, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to tie this all together and pull out this season. So whatever you may be watching or doing, enjoy it. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 3 on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300.